Don't be so negative. You're jumping on a bandwagon. Stop hating things just because women enjoy them. Her books glorify abusive relationships. She does not believe in adding trigger warnings. And 8 of the top best-selling books in 2022 were written by her. I think she's doing fine, and my silly little video will not hurt her. If you don't know who Colleen Hoover is, she is a highly prolific, popular, and controversial romance author. There's a lot of history and drama around Coho, but I kind of just want to talk about my own experience reading her for the first time, and then give a synopsis of a book that I recently read by her. My experience with Coho is this. In 2021, I was looking for suggestions on TikTok for thriller horror books. Some of you already know where this is going. During that time, I did find several authors that I enjoyed, and I've now read several books by. I was also recommended Verity by Colleen Hoover. If you want the full breakdown on this book, Alize, With Cindy, and Nikki Carrion have all done great videos on it. At that point, though, I had never heard of Colleen Hoover, and the book talker who recommended this did not mention that it was in the romance genre. They definitely probably mentioned that there was a love story within it, but emphasized that it was a mystery book. But I had no idea, and I wouldn't have picked it up if I had known, and I should have done my due diligence instead of just picking up a book based on a random suggestion of someone I don't even know. There's nothing wrong with reading romance or smut or erotica or fan fiction. I don't care. But it's just not for me. Whatever. So I did end up reading Verity, and I was interested in the mystery. I'll give her that. And based on my knowledge of her other books now, I think it is one of her more interesting concepts. But the overall execution and the ending and the bonus chapter, disappointing to say the least. Also though, even if you are a romance reader, I don't think that she does romance well. I really don't think that she writes sex very well. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, I'm not the target demographic. Based on this book, as well as other synopsises. Based on other videos that I've watched, it seems like the best she usually does is like, he slid into her, they rocked together, it felt good, she moaned. Like, again though, I'm not the target demographic, but this doesn't make me feel like I'm missing anything. Coho seems to think that anything that's not missionary is straight up kinky. It's like how E.L. James tried to write BDSM, but she just had the dom physically assault his sub regardless of consent, as if that's how any of that works. But also if it was written by a total virgin who's only ever heard vague innuendos. Honestly, it's like if I'd written a sex scene when I was 16 or 17 or 18 or 19. Anyways, I read Verity and I felt righteous indignation at having been misled. So that's when I got a little obsessed with watching Rant review videos on YouTube, and it led me to want to make my own. To that end, I was perusing thrift books for a used copy of one of Coho's books that I hadn't seen a video on yet, and I found out that she had written a novella, which is perfect because novellas are typically shorter than novels, and it did take me about 6 months to read the book and script this video, so imagine how long it would have been if it would have been a full-length novel. So I purchased and read Finding Cinderella by Colleen Hoover, and I figured out halfway through that it's part of a series. So I was a little lost for some of the details, but overall it didn't really matter. And now I will be launching into a synopsis of this book, so if you don't want spoilers for some reason and you don't want to hear even more shit talk about Colleen Hoover, I don't even know why you're still here if that's the case, but you can click away. Prologue. Our main character Daniel is a high school student, and his class schedule contains an error where he doesn't have a class assigned for one period of the day, so he just goes and sleeps in a maintenance closet, as you do. One day he's sleeping in the closet when someone tumbles in and lands on top of him. It's a girl, and she's crying, and they both awkwardly are trying to get up, but it is dark and claustrophobic, and she's clearly upset, so Daniel just kind of embraces her and tries to comfort her, which is pretty sweet, but then he gets kind of horny. So never mind. And he imagines this chance encounter is like a fairy tale, saying, quote, "It feels kind of euphoric, like we're in some sort of fairy tale. Like she's Tinkerbell and I'm Peter Pan. No, wait, I don't want to be Peter Pan. Maybe she could be like Cinderella and I'll be her Prince Charming. Yeah, I like that fantasy better. Cinderella's hot when she's all poor and sweaty and slaving over the stove. She also looks good in her ball gown." The girl calms down enough to say, "I hate them." "Who?" Daniel asks. "Everybody," she says. "I hate everybody." "Me too, girl." And then I turn the page, and Daniel says the same thing. I am no more original than a Colleen Hoover character. Daniel calls the girl Cinderella and she laughs, and then they just start making out for the next 20 minutes until the bell rings. And Cinderella gets up and leaves without ever telling him her name or showing him her face. Because remember, it's dark in there. Daniel says this: "I don't know who the hell she was or why the hell she ended up here, but I hope to God she comes back. I need a whole hell of a lot more of that." Okay. So now Daniel is waiting around every day in the broom closet, hoping that she'll come back, and after a week, she does. But she snakes her hand in the door and turns off the light before coming in, so he still can't see her face. They sit together and hold hands in the dark, and finally Cinderella asks, "This is weird, isn't it?" And the answer to that question is yes. But the way that Daniel responds and the way that their conversation goes just boils my blood. It is annoying. He says, "Elaborate. Lots of things could be considered weird, so I'm not sure what you're referring to." And I think the tone is supposed to be joking, whatever, but the girl answers pretty earnestly, so I just don't know how to read that. Then they joke around and they're trying to guess what each other looks like, and Daniel describes Smurfette. I did think that was a little bit funny, so 1 point to Coho for that. But he also thinks to himself that if he did know what she looks like, she would lose all appeal to him. So minus 1,000 for this main character, and the score is unfortunately negative 999 for Miss Hoover. Cinderella says that she came back to thank him for comforting her and for not pushing for more when they kissed, and to tell him she won't be back again because she's moving away at the end of the semester. Then they start to talk about sex. They both say that they've had sex before, but they've never made love. But they also both say that they've never been interested in committed relationships, so I don't know how they expect to have gotten to that point. Also, they're both like 17, but they're both sad about it. So they decide to pretend to be in love and fuck in the broom closet. So they lay their clothes on the floor, tell each other I love you, and fuck in the broom closet. Luckily, this book is aimed for young adults, so it was kind of a fade to black moment, or a fade to blacker moment, because they're already in the dark in the broom closet. After they're done, Cinderella leaves, and they never even learned each other's names or even saw each other's faces. Chapter 1. Flash forward 1 year, and Daniel is fighting with his now on-again, off-again girlfriend, Val, and they break up for good. But Daniel does say that he avoids looking at her, because if he does, he will want to go back to her place to make up. So he's a real manic character, this guy. Afterwards, Daniel goes to his friend's house and enters her room through the window. That happens a lot in this book. I don't know why. Maybe it's explained earlier in the series, but we're just going to treat it as the norm. He greets his friend by saying, "Hey, cheese tits." Because his quirky little thing is that he gives everyone nicknames. Also, as a certified whitey, I thought cheese tits was probably a good thing because cheese. But I looked it up and it's not. Cheese Tits' real name is Sky, and she is Daniel's best friend's Holder's girlfriend. Holder enters the room with another girl that Daniel doesn't recognize, but is immediately obsessed with. Or rather, he's obsessed with the spoon that she's using to eat ice cream. "I can't stop staring at that spoon. I think I love that spoon." And that is such a Colleen Hoover coded line. I swear I've heard something almost identical to that in another one of her books. Daniel tells them that he's broken it off for good with Val and immediately starts mercilessly flirting with the spoon girl. And by that I mean he says even if she had an STI, he would still want to have sex with her. "I could have herpes, you know," she says. I grin at her and wink. "You somehow just made herpes sound appealing." How romantic. How romantic? How? We learn that she is Sky's best friend, and her name is Six. Like the number 6.
6.
6?
My favorite number is 6.
Bert, nobody's favorite number is 6.
They've never met before, but Daniel does think she seems oddly familiar. Six has also spent the last year or so studying abroad in Italy. This will be important later. So anyway, Holder gets mad at Daniel for flirting with Six because he says that he doesn't want the friend group to be awkward, so he forbids Daniel from having any relations with Six outside of the platonic, and he kicks Daniel out. And then Six follows immediately after him. So what was the point of that? Six lives right next door, or next window as it were, but now that she and Daniel are alone, they go back to flirting immediately. Duh. And then they agree to go on a date the following day. Daniel is obsessed with her, and we get more classic Coho lines like this. She looks like a fucking angel. I don't even know if people should use the words fucking and angel in the same thought structure, but shit, she really looks like a fucking angel with her blonde hair and big eyes. I'm not even sure what color her eyes are because it's dark and I didn't really pay attention when we were in Sky's bedroom, but whatever color they are, it's my new favorite color. I don't know what it is about the way that she writes, like with all the repetition and the way that the swears seem forced. Her writing just feels disingenuous to me. It's very, I'm 14 and this is deep. Chapter 2. Daniel is getting ready for his date and at the same time tells his family that he and Val are splitskis. His family consists of Daniel, of course, his mom, his dad, and his middle school sister, who we only ever know of as Chunk. Daniel's quirky nickname for his little sister is Chunk. I see no way this could negatively impact a 13-year-old's mental image of themselves. Anyway, everyone says they hated Val. Daniel arrives to pick up Six, and he is impressed because she doesn't carry a purse. And he thinks about how Val always carries a purse and constantly reapplies her makeup from within said purse. Daniel asks Six how they'll stay hidden from Sky, who has her window open right now, and Six says they've just got to think like MacGyver. And Daniel thinks to himself, oh my god, this chick just mentioned MacGyver? Hell yes. What year is it? So they crawl over the muddy yard to avoid being seen by Sky, and Daniel gets hard when Six wipes her hands off on her jeans. And then she wants to ride with the windows down, and she doesn't care that it'll mess up her hair. I'm getting the sense that she's not like other girls. She's different. It kind of seems like she doesn't give a shit about this date. Or at the restaurant now, Daniel asks if all of her siblings' names are also numbers, and Six says no, but her real name is Seven.
Seven.
Which I have heard the name Seven before, but at some point she got mad at her parents and decided to go by Six instead. Daniel thinks to himself that he's waiting for the moment that this pedestal that he has her on to come crashing down. And he says it's usually the moment when they start talking about ex-boyfriends, as if he hasn't spent this entire date comparing her to his ex-girlfriend in his head. He usually gives his silly little nicknames pretty quickly after meeting people, but he's still trying to figure her out, and he says that she is contradictory. Like how she's cute, but she doesn't seem to care about her appearance, but that is not contradictory. Some people are just naturally hot. Life ain't fair. And then he says, I'm not judging you at all by this next observation, but I'm aware of your reputation. How? You didn't even know who she was yesterday. Yet you don't seem like the type who needs a guy's attention to stroke your self-esteem. Because girls only sleep with guys for attention and not because they also enjoy sex. She says she's not like that anymore, and she's actually never gone on a real date before, because the guys she usually goes with only want one thing. Daniel says that those guys were missing out because getting to have dinner and a nice conversation with her is like the best. That is genuinely sweet. But then he says he wants to kiss her right here, right now. So, was he being honest or? And worse than that, they stand up on either side of the booth and kiss over the table. And when their lips part, they stay where they are, and Daniel thinks, I inhale even though I haven't taken a breath in almost a minute. He inhales even though he hasn't taken a breath in almost a minute. Am I reading this wrong, or is that not just how the respiratory system works? After dinner, they go to a playground to keep hanging out because they're enjoying each other's company, and this, at least, is very accurate to my experience dating in high school, which was minimal. But then he gets horny again because she gives him a fist bump, which is weirdly pivotal, so you have to remember that. They talk some more, blah, 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 and I do think they have good chemistry. I think these two characters make sense together because they are both insufferable. So, give another point to Colleen for that. The only thing we really need to know from this conversation is that Six says that the reason she stopped having casual relationships was because in Italy there was a boy who broke her heart. There's some trauma there, and she doesn't really want to talk about it, but it will be important later. At one point, Daniel tells Six that he really enjoys spending time with her and really likes talking to her, and then he thinks to himself, I close my eyes, wishing I hadn't just said all that. I know girls like guys who play the uninterested asshole part. I'm usually pretty good at playing that part. But not with Six. Maybe because I usually am an uninterested asshole. But with her, I'm as interested and curious and hopeful as I could possibly be. Shut the fuck up. So he eventually takes her home, and they kiss goodnight and decide to be exclusive already. But they still want to hide it from Holder and Sky, so they decide that when those two are around, they'll just act like they hate each other. Another thing I liked, at the end of this chapter, Six closes the door, And Daniel turns around and just like collapses on the porch and looks up at the stars, and he's just really happy with the date and everything. But then Six opens the door again and sees him laying there, which I thought was kind of funny and cute. Shut up. Chapter 3, it is the first day of school, and Daniel gets there super early because he can't wait to see Six again. This is the day after their first date, by the way. And then he starts thinking about how he first started dating Val. Last year, after the closet incidents, Daniel was looking everywhere for Cinderella. And one day he bumps into Val, and she says, "Watch it, kid," which I don't know if it's something that teenagers say, but it's not that uncommon of a phrase, and Cinderella used this phrase. So what does Daniel do? Apologize? Call her Cinderella? Ask if she's had sex in a broom closet lately? None of the above. He immediately just goes over and kisses her. He immediately realizes that she is not Cinderella, but she is really hot, so he asks her out anyway. Back in the present, Daniel is sitting in his car in the school parking lot, and he's kind of having a little bit of an anxiety attack about how much he likes Six, and he's worried that he's mistaking forbidden romance and physical attraction for a deeper connection. Suddenly, Six plops down into the passenger seat, and Daniel is immediately assured by her presence and by her expressing that she feels the same way about him. This is only one day after their first date, by the way, and 2 days after they first met. They haven't even known each other a full 48 hours. They look up and see Sky and Holder headed right for them, so Six ducks down and Daniel jumps out to intercept. Sky asks Daniel if he's seen Six this morning. No, he answers a little too quickly. Sky goes to look for her, and Holder studies Daniel suspiciously. Daniel thinks of an excuse and tells Holder that he just had a quickie with Val and he feels guilty because they're broken up. Holder says he doesn't care who Daniel dates or what he does, as long as it's not with Six, which is so contrived. Why does he care this much? Daniel says something disparaging about Six to throw Holder off, but he's not okay with this either. No loving her, no hating her, no screwing her, no dating her. At lunch, they talk about why Six went to Italy, and she says that she actually speaks Spanish better, but she preferred to go to Italy over Mexico.
Am I a joke to you?
Val comes up and tells Daniel to come talk to her in the hallway, where she says she will take him back under certain conditions, to which he says, "No thank you," and she huffs away angrily. He subtly motions for Six to join him in the hall, and they kiss a little and talk some, and he says something corny like, "I'll miss you in fourth period," and Six says, "Don't make me puke," to which Daniel says this: "I bet you're adorable when you puke. I bet your actual puke is even adorable. It's probably bubblegum pink." Pink vomit in humans is usually a sign of bleeding in the upper gastrointestinal tract, which includes the esophagus, stomach, and duodenum. Daniel goes back to the lunch table, and they talk about having dinner tonight at Sky's to welcome Six home. Another person at their table, he's probably from one of the previous books in the series, but his name is Brecken, and he seems suspicious of Daniel and Six. Then Six returns to the table. They staggered their re-entry to be less suspicious. Six and Daniel touch knees under the table, and Daniel is like, "She's like a drug I've become immediately addicted to." Okay, Edward Cullen, calm down. Lunch ends, and Daniel walks Six to her locker in front of everyone anyway, so what the hell? I thought they were supposed to act like they hate each other in front of everyone, but somehow they're alone right after lunch ends. But when she leaves to go to class, Daniel turns around and is face to face with Brecken, who he immediately spills his guts to. And Brecken is like, "This dinner tonight just got interesting," because now he's in on the secret, and also, Daniel could barely hold it together for one lunch period. Chapter 4, we are now at the dinner at Sky's house, and Brecken couldn't make it. So what was the point of that conversation at all? Six is being glib about everyone's questions about Italy, and Daniel thinks that he's the only person that notices that she's uncomfortable. He must know her better than anyone, as if she and Sky aren't best friends. And he and Six haven't been dating for less than 24 hours. Also, I'd wager other people are noticing. But it is awkward because this dinner is supposed to be welcoming her home from Italy, and she's not really answering anyone's questions about Italy. But we know that there's some trauma there, whatever. Six suddenly exclaims that she got everyone gifts, but she forgot them at home, and she asks Daniel to help her go get them. Very subtle. Outside, she says there are actually no gifts, and she was just freaking out and wanted to get away. She is scared that once everybody knows that they're dating and it's no longer this secret forbidden romance, that Daniel will no longer be interested in her. And Daniel is appalled by this, as if he hasn't been thinking the same goddamn thing for most of this book. But he decides to take a stand and make a grand gesture by barging back into the dinner party and giving a monologue that's just an even shittier synopsis of their relationship than the one you're watching right now. She fist bumped me. It's not my fault. She hates purses, and she fist bumped me. She's weird, and half the time I can't keep up with her, but she thinks I'm funny as hell. And Chunk asked me this morning if I wanted to love her someday, and I realized I've never hoped I could love someone more than I want to love her. So every single one of you who has an issue with us dating is gonna have to get over it because I pause and turn towards 6. Because you fist bumped me, and I could care less who knows we're together. It should be I couldn't care less, but okay. I'm not going anywhere, and I don't want to go anywhere, so stop thinking I'm into you because I'm not supposed to be into you. I'm into you because you're awesome. They have known each other for less than 72 hours. Then they kiss in front of everyone for 30 seconds until people start to clear their throats awkwardly. And everyone is really happy for them, even though they forbade them from dating like 2 days ago. Later, they're all looking through Six's pictures from Italy, which she has printed out for some reason, even though smartphones exist. And Six and Daniel decide to go make out in her room instead. He says he has 3... Oh my god, I hate this. He says he has 3 questions to ask before. Before what, she says. And then an entire page of staple Hoover repetition. Before we do what we both want to do. Before I lean in 1 more inch. Before your lips part just enough for me to steal a taste. Before I put my hands on your hips and back you up until you have nowhere to go but your bed. Before I slowly lower myself on top of you and our hands become curious and brave. Before my fingers slip under the hem of your shirt and before my hand begins to explore its way around your stomach and I discover I've never touched skin as soft as yours. What if she has eczema? Before your breaths pick up pace and our bodies are aching because everything is feeling just... What? Because everything we're feeling is just making us want more and more and more of each other. Until I'm afraid I'll beg you not to ask me to slow down. Blah, 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 blah. His 3 questions are, what is your favorite color?
Blue. No.
His 3 questions are, what is your birthday? What is your favorite food? And what in this room reveals the biggest secret? Which she answers, Halloween. Of course you had to ruin Halloween for me. Mashed potatoes. And her heart. The latter of which seems like a cop-out, but Daniel is either unperturbed or too horny to care because they just start making out. While they're doing that, he thinks, I feel like deep down my heart knows she's too good to be true. My mind and my whole body know she's too good to be true, so I kiss her harder, hoping to convince myself that this is real. It's not some fairy tale. It's not an hour of make-believe. So Daniel goes for second base and Six stops him and he does not push, which is like baseline human decency, but also he is a Colleen Hoover main male character, so it's almost like he's a hero. This is like saint behavior for them. But then he just gets up and leaves without speaking, which according to him, like a knowing look passed between them that they both like didn't want to go too far and do anything they regret, blah, blah, blah. But he just leaves. He doesn't say anything. He just leaves. So he's outside again and he runs into Holder leaving Skies, and Holder says that he is happy for Daniel and Six, which doesn't make any sense. I don't know why how he changed his mind so quickly, but whatever, that's nice. And Daniel calls out to him, I love you, Holder. Best friends forever. He keeps walking but lifts his hand in the air and flips me off. It's almost as cool as it's almost as cool as a fist bump. So stupid. Chapter 5. A month later, Six and Daniel are having dinner with his family. Daniel's parents are embarrassing him, and Six is laughing along with them, so Daniel says, I hate everybody. And Six replies, I hate everybody too. And this triggers Daniel's memory. Cinderella said the same thing in the closet last year. Dun dun dun! So he leans over and whispers in Six's ear, I just realized why I haven't given you a nickname yet. Because I already gave you one, Cinderella. Daniel is elated. He has been thinking about that girl and that experience for over a year, and he expects Six to feel the same way. But she does not. She runs from the room crying, goes out to her car, and tells him, this was a mistake. Chapter 6. Daniel follows her to her house and convinces her to talk to him. And by convinces her to talk to him, I mean he yells at her about how she owes him an explanation, and that was one of the best days of his life. Because he is a teenager and he got laid, and he doesn't want her to feel bad about this experience they shared. She hasn't really said anything this whole time, that he's just been yelling at her, and then she finally dramatically looks up at him and goes, I got pregnant. Because this is Colleen Hoover's world, and if a female commits the act of enjoying sex, she must be punished. Chapter 7. Six tells him that she didn't realize she was pregnant until she was already in Italy, and she was freshly 18, in a foreign country, and had a difficult choice to make. And I know what comes to my mind when I hear that. I don't know what comes to your mind, but I know Coco and I aren't thinking about the same thing. So Daniel is mad at Six for not telling him, even though she didn't know who he was. And he says she should have been plastering the school with posters and been on the announcements looking for him. But she literally just told him she was in a different country when she realized she was pregnant. She was already in Italy after school. Like, she was not there. He's so stupid. So Daniel storms off and he goes and finds Holder and he's crying and punching things, but he still won't tell Holder what's going on. So Holder suggests that they go play video games at Brecken's house to get the frustration out of whatever's going on. Wait, oh my god, I just realized something. This is a flashback. Okay, we're flashing back to when I mentioned about the pictures from Italy. She was pregnant in Italy. There couldn't have been any pictures of her because you would see the belly bump. But I guess if you just did from, you just did like a selfie or just pictures of landscape or Colosseum or whatever. But I didn't think of that before. Chapter 8. At school the next day, Daniel still hasn't told Holder what's going on. He wants to confront Six for more answers when he rounds a corner and there she is. He asks her if the boy who broke her heart in Italy was the baby. She's crying again, but she nods. And Daniel just turns and leaves to go to class without looking at her. What a dick. Chapter 9. At lunch, Six lays her head down on the table to cry, and Daniel wraps his arms around her. I can't help but think about that PDA couple in high school. And eventually he picks her up and carries her from the lunchroom to the maintenance closet where they met last year. She apologizes, and he says, "You were doing what was best for the baby," who she gave up for adoption in Italy because there was no other option. And Daniel says he probably would have ruined the kid's life anyway by giving him a nickname like Salty Balls. Colleen just loves making a joke about a baby's testicles.
If I had a nickel for every time
Colleen Hoover made a joke about baby's testicles.
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
At least she didn't immediately kill this one. Daniel then reveals that he got into the same college that Six and Sky and Holder are all 3 going to, so they'll all be together again next year in college. They say they love each other, and it's a happy ending. And that was Finding Cinderella by Colleen Hoover. There is an epilogue, but it ties into the series, so I do not understand it, and I will not be summarizing it. I will say that reading this with the intent of making fun of it made for an enjoyable experience for me. If all of Coho's books are meant to be satire and cringe, she's a genius, but I doubt that that's the case. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye. Speak your piece.